For as far back as man's memory will stretch, the moon has been the queen of his heavens. This marvelously detailed close-up of the moon's surface, made by a lunar orbiter, has been called the most remarkable photograph of the 20th century. Until the space age, man's search for knowledge of the moon had been conducted from a distance of 250,000 miles. No longer. Soon man himself will walk on this surface. By the 21st century, the moon will be simply another outpost of terrestrial civilization. On it, man will set up his instruments, mobile laboratories crammed with tools to poke and probe the moon until it has revealed most of its secrets. Telescopes to view the heavens without the cloudy distortion of the Earth's atmosphere. Theodolites to survey and map the lunar surface as thoroughly as our road maps picture the highways that link the cities of Earth. All this will happen as we move into the 21st century.
The 21st century is brought to you by Union Carbide. The Discovery Company.
By the 21st century, this journey will be a commonplace, certainly for men of the United States and the Soviet Union. Thundering rockets will lift them, their instruments and materials to the moon. The moon is not overly large, with an area less than that of North and South America. There is no weather on the moon, only the unchanging march of day and night that swings temperatures wildly through the lunar vacuum, from 225 degrees in the sun to 250 degrees below zero in the dark. Although these conditions are extreme, they pose no problems that cannot be solved by current technology. Will men colonize the moon in the near future? At Huntsville, Alabama, this reporter spoke with a space pioneer whose career began at Peenemünde, Germany, building V-1s and V-2s, and who is now the director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, Dr. Werner von Braun.
Dr. von Braun, you began in rocketry some 30 years ago, one of the pioneers. It's now just about 30 years from this day to the turn of the century. What about, by the turn of the century, travel in space for the average Earthling?
My estimation that in the year 2000, our activities on the moon can probably be best compared with our present activities in Antarctica. As far as technical feasibility is concerned, I think that in 1975, that is less than 10 years from now, we could have a semi-permanent or maybe even a permanent small station on the moon, a kind of little America on the moon, where astronauts and scientists could stay, say, for half a year and then be relieved by another ship arriving there, rotating the crews. So this is the technical feasibility.
Dr. von Braun, what do you see in the way of the vehicle in which we travel in space in the next 35 years? Already in the last 15 years, we've built up this system of rockets to the point that your model doesn't even fit in the room any longer. Are we going far beyond Saturn V in the boost power?
I think there will be a continued need for some such a workhorse, and it's rather arbitrary how big it'll be, as long as it is big.
This is the Saturn V, the giant vehicle that will take man and his colony-building materials to the moon. 361 feet tall, it towers over a 10-story building and requires this enormous crawler, as long and broad as a football field, to move it from assembly site to launch pad. This Saturn can place 250,000 pounds into orbit around the Earth. Eventually, with an atomic-powered third-stage engine, a 21st century version of the Saturn will be able to orbit loads of 500,000 pounds. This will be the routine in the 21st century as Saturn-type boosters, the workhorses of space, lumber into an Earth orbit with their heavy cargoes. Here, in what amounts to a well-used traffic circle, they will be met by lunar freighters that will pick up the cargo in orbit and carry it back to the moon's colonial settlers. The colonists will probably use the same system as the first manned landing employs. The lunar module will detach itself from the Saturn and seek a landing site. Then it will slowly descend, firing its rockets to settle lower and lower on a column of thrust, like a fat man sinking into a cushion. A lunar module prototype is being tested at Edwards Air Force Base in California, called the Lunar Landing Research Vehicle. Its test pilot for this run is Colonel Jack Kluver. Destined to fly and land on a planet where there is no air, it needs neither wings nor control surfaces. Power and maneuverability are provided by rockets. 2 hydrogen peroxide rockets furnish lift, while 8 pairs of reaction rockets serve as maneuvering controls. Looking much like a mechanical grasshopper, this lunar module has a leg spread of 13.3 feet and weighs 3,600 pounds. A giant turbofan sits underneath the vehicle and gives it extra lift, enough to simulate the moon's 1/6 gravity. It is destined to be the short-haul, all-purpose jeep of the moon, hauling men and cargo between orbiting rockets and the surfaces of the moon. At the moment, sophisticated instruments such as this surveyor are sending back data about the geology of the moon. It is fascinating information, for parts of the lunar surface appear to be quite similar to portions of the Earth's surface. Here, this lunar crater, photographed by one of our unmanned vehicles, looks remarkably similar to these Earth craters in Iceland. The lunar rocks shown in this satellite photograph look as if they had been spilled from the same geologic event that tumbled these rocks in the Canary Islands. Such obvious similarities make fairly detailed lunar research possible on Earth. Likely-looking sites such as this Oregon Valley and these caves may tell us what sort of materials we may find in the lunar valleys and caves.
Much larger.
Colonies on the moon shall have to either find or make the materials of life on the spot.
Compared to what you'd probably find on the moon.
Perhaps a moon crater such as this one, known to astronomers as Copernicus, may be the walls for one of man's earliest lunar colonies. What will such a colony look like 250,000 miles away from the Earth? North American Aviation has built a model of a lunar colony. We spoke with research engineer Leonard Tinnen.
I gather this is one concept of a permanent moon station.
Yes, this is one concept that's evolved from our studies of a lunar colony that could exist around 2000, around the turn of the century. It starts from a rather bare bones beginning of perhaps the use of an expended booster stage covered with lunar material to protect it from the environment. It's simply a do-it-yourself type of home to live in until the full-blown operation becomes set up. And then, of course, after a period of time, we could see one concept that would involve a living colony in the center. There are 8 cylindrical cells represented here. One could conceivably house a hospital, another a recreation area, sleeping quarters.
What are these tubes around here on the outside of the area?
The tubes represent farms, greenhouses. The big problem of sustaining life on a large lunar colony, of course, is to have food. It becomes rather prohibitive to transport this from Earth. So the intent here is in the eventual station for water and food to be made available from the materials that exist on the surface of the moon.
Water is the key to man's life on the moon. Will he find it in frozen pools beneath the lunar surface, or trapped within the crystal structure of some moon mineral? They say you cannot get blood from a stone, but on the moon you might be able to squeeze water from the rocks. Here at Bend, Oregon, Douglas aircraft geologist Dr. Jack Green examines rock formations that are thought to be similar to volcanic rocks on the moon. The cooled lava collected here is rich in water and gases. One recipe for making water. Dump rocks into an airtight container and cook at a temperature of 300 degrees centigrade. An entire lunar colony's water needs might be met by cooking as little as 10 cubic feet of rock per hour. The heat will free the trapped water from the melting rock. The water then passes through a distillation coil similar to a moonshiner's still and is collected in this flask. If water can be found or made on the moon, it will free a colony from one of its major import needs, food. The science of growing plants in water is called hydroponics. Hydroponics could thrive in the low gravity of the moon. Here in the Union Carbide Research Laboratory in Tarrytown, New York, the ability of a variety of plants to grow solely in water is measured. Studies are being made to determine the exact strain of vegetables that might thrive best under lunar conditions. Nor are vegetables the only plants that might be grown. Man, it seems, does not live by bread alone, even on the moon. Dr. Sanford Siegel explains.
People living under the most austere of conditions will still try to grow a geranium on the windowsill. And I think in space, all the more, the tie to the earth that some sort of green thing growing represents could be a very significant psychological factor. The food that it would provide, if we used an ordinary garden type of plant or cultivated plant, is of course immediately familiar to our digestive systems and has perhaps an advantage as a direct food source over the algae, which have attracted a great deal of attention in recent years. In any case, some kind of processing and some kind of a multi-step food cycle would have to be set up under these conditions. The cycle would be closed by the utilization of waste products.
At this Lancaster, California farm, human wastes are used to provide a bed on which to grow this substance, algae. Although edible and extremely nourishing, algae is not one of man's most digestible foods. Thus, a better method is to extend the food chain by feeding the algae to domestic animals like chickens and then eat the chickens. With enough to eat, the colony can perform its main task, scientific investigation.
What's the observatory-looking structure over there?
Well, that is just what it is. It's part of an astronomical observatory. The moon provides a very suitable base of operations, a very stable platform without atmospheric disturbances for us to observe the stars and the planets. One of the basic reasons for being here on the moon.
What's this big flat surface over here with the dome on it?
Well, that's the 2000 AD counterpart of our modern downtown heliport. That's actually a space landing platform. The dome, much like the Astrodome in Houston, would be retracted. The vehicle coming to us from Earth would land on this finished pad. The dome would close around it. It could be unloaded, serviced in a protected environment.
Well, will men be coming out of this moon station, is it your idea, up onto the surface to take a little moonlight walk or an earthlight stroll?
We believe that their strolls will be more housed within small mobile surface devices.
Like this little fellow over there.
Right, with tractors or treads or some sort of walking device. Many types are now under study. Again, reflecting back on the basic purpose of being there, to explore the entire lunar sphere.
This is not the moon, but Long Island. Grumman engineer Edward Marco.
Now this, an actual representation of the contour of the moon.
The specific site on the moon that we acquired from the folks at JPL. They had some topographical maps, and we actually duplicated one section of the moon, and then beyond that, we actually have the reflected light characteristics quite well matched.
Oh, is that the reason for the light and the dark gravel and slag?
Exactly, exactly.
On the moon surface, is there the same light and dark stone?
It's quite modeled, and we try to duplicate the same degree of modeling in the same percentages. Now, when looking at these craters, when the sun's behind you, the far side of the crater is illuminated the same way as the forward edge, as the bottom side, as the adjacent flat area. And this is what makes obstacle avoidance so darn difficult when the sun is behind you.
You know, these craters all seem to be terribly symmetrical. They really look like they're man-built. Are the craters on the moon as symmetrical as this?
They are quite symmetrical. In fact, quite a few of the impact craters almost look as though they're machined in the surface. They're quite perfect.
Well, now, how have you solved this problem of getting around on the moon with your vehicle here?
Well, it's an odd-shaped vehicle, but what we tried to do here is to have a wheel that had a very soft spring rate, so it would tend to decouple or disassociate itself with a rubbly type ride.
But like the springs on a car, it's going to take the bumps without the vehicle itself being shaken up.
Exactly. It's about 5 times softer than a luxury auto car.
Now, how is this vehicle propelled?
Well, it has an electric motor in each wheel, individually powering the wheels with, ideally, a fuel cell in that aft module. This particular vehicle has a gasoline engine driving a generator.
Could we take a look inside?
Well, fine. Well, Walter, get in the pilot seat here, and I'll check you out.
Great.
And, start experiencing some of the problems in driving here. This is a unit controller, and you'll put the palm of your hand against that hand plate there. To go forward, you just push the controller forward. Left, right. If you want to stop, pull it back. All the controls are right in your right hand.
Sounds even simple enough for me to do.
No problem. And the speedometer there to the left. And this is not a real sports car. Top speed is about 10 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm. Could we take a ride in it?
Well, let's get started. Let's see, we'll just have to push the start button and we'll be all set here. Now we're all set to go.
All right.
The moon cannot be duplicated exactly. There will be no trees, nor will we see as far as we do on Earth with its 12-mile horizon. The moon is a smaller ball. Its horizon is shorter, a scant 3 miles. This makes lunar surface navigation difficult.
Now we're traveling right with the sun on our back now, and this is one of the more difficult conditions.
Yes, that crater is hard to see over there without the little dimple there, without any sides to it.
Yet the raised lip crater behind it is quite clear. We could start making a slight right turn now. That's fine. Doing real well. That's a pretty good speed. You can make a left turn here to avoid that big crater. And be careful of the dimple just beyond it.
Oh, yeah. That's a nice little bear trap over there.
All right.
This thing is really, these controls are quite simple to operate. Now, of course, the roughness of this ride and Earth gravity would not be duplicated on the
surface, presumably with that 1/6 gravity.
That's right. The motion of this vehicle in 1/6 gravity would be comparable to the motions of a rowboat, about a half a cycle per second. Quite slow. Here's a precarious situation here. I'm not
Now,
quite
can we
sure.
go up this little...
I would say you might be doing better to, I guess we can maneuver right over the top of this.
Right over the top of this?
I think so.
Once man is on the moon, he shall first explore and then exploit it. This will mean not one, but many colonies. General Electric scientists envision instant colonies gouged into the lunar surface with A-bombs. Plastic membranes are then inflated and domes top off the colony to protect it from stray meteors, while portable atomic generators provide heat, light, and atmosphere. How thoroughly rooted man may become in his lunar colonies is a question that has intrigued science writer Isaac Asimov.
There will be people who will be born on the moon, live there, and die there, and perhaps never visit the Earth. I think that they will represent our hope for the future as far as space exploration is concerned. It will be a lot easier for them to carry on the exploration of the rest of the solar system than for ourselves to do so, for a variety of reasons. And I suppose that by 2066, the moon colony, which will be well established by then, will be the space pioneers. On the moon, they will probably live under the level of the surface in an artificial world, in a sense, with cleaned air, with water, and all their necessities supplied by technology, so that people can become moon men in a literal sense. Before then, the moon will be populated by greenhorns only, by tenderfeet, who will have their heartstrings tied to the Earth. But eventually, children will be born there. And while I suppose at first they will be brought back to Earth, the crucial time will come when people stay there long enough to allow their children to grow to maturity. Then they may not want to come back to Earth or be able to if they wanted to. Earth's gravity is 6 times that of the moon. And someone who's really acclimated to the moon's gravity would have a great deal of difficulty standing up under Earth's.
Well, these people that we breed on the moon, it doesn't sound like they're going to be really the kind of people that we normally think of associating with here on Earth.
Well, I've speculated that we might develop two subspecies of man, G and null G, G representing gravity, null G representing low or zero gravity. I think there will be sufficient differences, both psychologically and physically, so that neither group will feel completely at home with the other. They'll always be aware of differences. There may even conceivably be that there will be no love lost between them. Nevertheless, it also seems to me that it will be the null G men, the low gravity men, who will be naturals for the exploration of the solar system.
Like some lunar Lewis and Clark, men will walk on the moon and uncover its secrets. For the moon is a vast treasure house of information, a cosmic history book on which has been recorded events we have long yearned to know about. The secret of the moon's origin will be revealed here. The story of the Earth's birth may be uncovered on the moon. For the secrets it shields, the treasures it stores, or perhaps simply because it is there, man will colonize the moon in the 21st century. And from here, he will reach far out into space. His telescopes will comb the heavens to the very frontiers of the universe. From the moon, he will truly step out into space, launching first instruments and then men to land on the other planets of our solar system. Next week, a trip from Chicago in the 21st century. Not one trip, but 5 that you might be taking in the year 2001. You travel on the kind of vehicles that will be carrying us 3.5 decades from now. Next week, a trip from Chicago on the 21st century. This is Walter Cronkite reporting.
The 21st Century was brought to you by Union Carbide. The Discovery Company. The 21st Century was filmed and edited under the supervision and control of CBS News.